What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss the latest on the big iOS 17.4 Beta 1 update. We're also going to discuss why bots are the reason the Apple Vision Pro pre-orders sold out, new Apple products dropping in just a couple of months, Fortnite is coming back to iOS, the Apple Car is delayed again, a crazy AirTags story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated on everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and check out the Apple Den newsletter. All right, so let's start with iOS 17.4 because the very first beta was just released earlier this week, and this was a massive update. This dominated headlines because of the fact that we finally got sideloading on the iPhone for those in the EU. So as you guys know, the EU basically forced Apple to enable sideloading on the iPhone, which means that you can have third-party app stores on the iPhone and download and install and update applications from a third-party source that is not Apple's own app store. That is now going to be possible on EU devices. And for those asking, like, can't I just change my region in my iPhone and be able to access that? No, it appears that Apple is actually using GPS for this. So you actually have to be in the EU for this to work, for you to be able to sideload with iOS 17.4. Now, this also means that Fortnite will be coming back to iOS for the first time in years. So we all know about the whole legal battle that's been going on between Epic Games and Apple, but it looks like now Fortnite has officially announced that Fortnite's going to return to iOS in Europe in 2024. You can see they say it's distributed by the upcoming Epic Games Store for iOS. So they're going to have their own third-party app store on iOS, and that's going to be where you can download and install Fortnite on the iPhone. So if you're wondering about the nitty-gritty details about this, I did discuss a lot of that in my What's New video on 17.4 Beta 1, so I will leave that link down in the description below if you missed that video. Now, one thing I said in that video is that game streaming applications such as, the Xbox Cloud Gaming app, I mentioned how that was related to sideloading in the EU, but it's actually not. That is something that is going to roll out globally. So it looks like now those game streaming apps like Xbox Cloud Gaming and the NVIDIA, application will be available in the App Store worldwide, starting with iOS 17.4. Now, before, these were only available in the web browser. Like, you could only play all the games on Xbox Cloud Gaming in Safari or a web browser, but now you're going to be able to play multiple applications within that one application by only having that one Xbox application installed. And that is going to be a big deal. I especially think it's going to be a big deal for the Vision Pro because you're going to be able to play all those Xbox games. In theory, we don't know for sure yet, play all those Xbox games with the Vision Pro headset on. That's going to be awesome. Okay, so enough about sideloading for now. Let's discuss some additional features and changes included in iOS 17.4 Beta 1 that I did not cover in my initial What's New video. I covered quite a few in there, but there are quite a few that I missed as well that I did not, realize until later on after using the software. So the first one is going to be inside of the podcast application. And if you go into podcasts and take a look on the bottom tab bar, we now have a home icon and a home tab. So that used to just say listen now, and now it says home. So the content in here appears to be the same. It might be a little bit different, but it's mostly the same as what we had before. But more importantly, in 17.4, if we go to, one of our podcasts, if we start playing one of our podcasts and we tap on the little lyrics button down in the bottom left-hand corner, we now have transcriptions in iOS 17.4. This is something that is long overdue, so you can see it now goes kind of just like the lyrics in the music app. It will highlight when the person is saying, whatever they're saying. And you'll also notice that down here, we have a search button. So you can tap on search and you can find something within that podcast while it's currently transcribing, which is awesome. Now, we also have some very similar changes in the music application. So if we go over to music here, you'll notice that on the bottom left-hand corner, once again, the Listen Now tab has been replaced with Home. So we now have Home. However, in the music application, this whole section is very different. So there's different sections here that we did not see before. So like, for instance, I normally go to the Browse tab to find like the latest albums that just came out, but I did not see them. So now they're showing up here. It's kind of wonky, but anyways, in the Home tab over here, I was able to see some of those new albums under new releases right here. So when I go here, it shows like this week, last week, and previous days like that. Okay, so I just checked on 17.3 to make sure, and it looks like Apple actually updated it for older devices as well. But I swear that was first on 17.4 Beta 1. So not a huge change here, I guess, in terms of the music application notification home content, but that whole tab has been renamed to home. And I'm kind of unsure as to how I feel about it being called home. I feel like when I go to home, in my music app, it's the library that I'm going to. So I don't really know if I agree with them calling the For You page or the Listen Now page home. I think home should have been library, but who knows? Apple could change it again. Now, something else I wanted to mention in the music application is that you can see we now have SharePlay support on the HomePods. So if I connect my iPhone to my HomePods, you can see we now have the SharePlay icon at the bottom. And from here, if we tap on that, it will bring up the QR code where others can join, and you don't have to have an Apple Music subscription. You don't even have to be on an iPhone. You can be on an Android and you can do this. So we first saw this with CarPlay, but now it is coming to the Apple TV and the HomePods when your iPhone is connected to it. Now, if we head into the App Store and we click on our profile picture up in the top right-hand corner, we have some changes here as well. So before, it just said purchased, subscriptions, and notifications, but now it says apps, subscriptions, purchase history, and notifications. If we head into the Files application and go to the Browse tab in the bottom right, and you look under Locations, the iCloud Drive glyph icon has finally been updated. So before, it showed the very outdated old iCloud glyph, but now it has been updated to the more modern looking iCloud glyph icon. If you are in Germany, you can now say just Siri instead of Hey S. If you go into the Siri in search settings, that's something we've had here in the US and other countries for a while, but it is now available in Germany as well. Now, this 17.4 beta also told us a lot about the next generation CarPlay or CarPlay 2.0, and it appears that that is officially launching in 2024, and there were several changes in the code indicating some of the changes coming to CarPlay. So we saw things like auto settings, the car camera, charge, climate, closures, media, tire pressure, and trips. So all of those were found in the code related to CarPlay. And then of course we did see the goodbye animation that's going to pop up on the screen, which I cannot wait to see that. That is apparently going to, show up on your CarPlay display when you shut off your vehicle. And then also found in the code was the ability to change the theme and the color scheme of that CarPlay 2.0, including the appearance of the instrument cluster. So all of this looks awesome, and it's awesome that 17.4, the code of 17.4 kind of just confirmed that this is all coming very soon. And then some of the other minor changes in the code are that you can now bump iPhones with someone to collaborate on a document and also to invite them to a game you're playing via Game Center. And even Taylor Swift was mentioned in the code of iOS 17.4 beta 1 because of course she was. You can't escape her. And then of course we did get new emoji as well. So we have these new emoji right here. Not as many as we've had in previous years, but hey, any new emoji I'm happy with. Now I did also want to follow up on the change to stolen device protection. So if you go into your Face ID and passcode settings and go to the new submenu for stolen device protection, we now have an always option for requiring security delay. So I've had some people ask, why would you want to have this, set to always? Why would you always want to have the 1 hour delay, even if you're at like your home or your work? And the reason being is because, and I shared this on Twitter as well, is because let's say you go to a gym every single day. You've been going to a gym every day for a year. Your phone is going to detect that as a familiar location, like your home or your work. So if somebody were to steal your phone, they'd be able to bypass that 1 hour delay, that double authentication, because you are at that frequent or familiar location. So since you cannot actually see all of your familiar locations or even any of your significant locations and settings, you kind of just have to guess what Apple is picking up on as familiar locations. So if you want to, just have the tightest security possible on your phone, I would suggest changing that to always. And the reason I'm okay with that is because if I ever need to change my password or anything like that, I usually just use my computer anyways. Like any major change, I will use my computer for. So, or if not, I could just wait an hour in between. It's not a big deal if you're the actual owner of the account. But anyways, let's move on to the performance. So performance on 17.4 beta 1 is actually really smooth, and it feels just like 17.3 to me. I know I feel like I say this every single time on a beta 1 for the past couple of betas, but it's true. 17.4 beta 1 is extremely smooth. I've been using it on this test device and also on my main device over here. So really no complaints in terms of performance whatsoever. Now I did run a Geekbench score, and you can see I did score a very nice 2955 on the single core and a 7371 on the multi-core. So if we compare that to the 17.3 run, you can see it is higher on both single core and multi-core, which is a good sign. This is actually the highest single core and multi-core we've had since 17.2, at least on my 15 Pro Max. And then in terms of the battery life to me has been actually a little bit worse than 17.3, and that's not really been typical for Apple. Usually the beta 1s are like the same or better than the previous version, the previous final release. The betas have just been so good lately, at least beta 1s. But battery for me is a little bit worse here on 17.4 beta 1. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's because of all, the big amount of changes on the back end, or if it's something to do with side loading, even though I'm in the US. I'm not sure. All I know is battery life has not been as good to me lately. So for the past like 2 days. So obviously this is still new software, so it's really hard to say yet. I'll have a better idea of battery life next week. And of course my opinion can change because it's still fresh. I've only used it for 48 hours. So it's really hard to say, but so far battery life feels slightly worse than 17.3 for me. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So we're probably on a 2-week cycle right now. Usually when you go from beta 1 to beta 2 on a 0.4 release, Apple typically waits around 2 weeks. So I would not expect to see 17.4 beta 2 until the week of February 5th. So next week is the week of January 29th. That would be the first week. And then they're going to skip that week, I believe. So we should see 17.4 beta 2 most likely on Tuesday, February 6th. And then after that, we will see, probably go on a weekly schedule after that. However, I would not be surprised to see a 17.3.1 at some point in February to patch up some bugs, maybe some security fixes. We could see that at some point in February. And then in terms of the final release for iOS 17.4, right now, I'm probably expecting that either on the week of March 4th or March 11th. Now, it's hard to say because Apple is supposedly holding a spring event, so we could see that release kind of tied to the Apple Spring event. So there's kind of a lot up in the air right now, and I'm sure we will hear a lot more details about that in February, especially when we get to the mid and later part of February. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news, and let's start with Apple Vision Pro pre-orders and bots that were buying the Apple Vision Pro. So Apple Vision Pro pre-orders went live last Friday. I was able to pre-order mine, and apparently so did 160 to 180,000 other people, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, because he said this: based on pre-order inventory and shipping times, I estimate that Apple sold 160 to 180,000 Vision Pro units during the first pre-order weekend. He went on to say that while the instant sellout indicated initial success, the shipping dates remained unchanged 48 hours after pre-orders opened, indicating that demand shrunk after core fans placed their orders. And if you're wondering how so many Apple Vision Pro pre-orders sold on that first weekend, well, this could explain some of the purchases, because according to Caseta, there were an influx of bots programmed to insta-buy Vision Pros on the morning of pre-orders. And what's surprising here is that not only did the requirement to have a Face ID scan stop these bots from working, but also the fact that there was a purchase limit that also did not stop these bots. So it says that bots were able to circumvent the Apple ID restriction purchase limits. Caseta found out that one bot was used to successfully check out 1,592 Vision Pro pre-orders when used within an entire community. Some individuals within this community claim to have obtained more than one device for themselves. This might have been accomplished by successfully obtaining newly generated or aged Apple accounts in advance of the event. At $2,500 above MSRP, this one bot would represent about a $4 million profit, assuming the entire inventory is resold. That is insane. And that is exactly why you're seeing so many of these up for sale on StockX and on eBay. Okay, so now let's move on to the new Apple products that are coming within the next couple of months. So according to Mark Gurman, Apple is planning to release new iPad Airs, new iPad Pros, and new MacBook Airs in either March or April. We just saw new CAD renders of the upcoming 12.9-inch iPad Air this week, and it showed a redesigned camera setup. So that is very likely exactly what the new iPad Air will look like. And then for the iPad Pro, this will be a big deal because they're expected to get OLED displays. So this will be the first time ever on an iPad that we get OLED. But the only downside of this is that they are going to be extremely expensive. And that is why a new report from this week suggested that Apple is already cutting 2024 iPad Pro orders by 30% indicating that they don't think sales will be as strong as they originally planned. And then also this week, we saw in the code of iPadOS 17.4 Beta 1 that there's going to be a landscape Face ID camera for the iPad Pro. And then for the MacBook Air, Gurman said that Apple plans to release multiple MacBook Airs with the M3 chip this spring, so it looks like the 13-inch and the 15-inch models will be released at the same time, unlike last year where we saw the 15-inch that was released way later after the 13-inch, and that kind of made it awkward when the M3 MacBook Air came out. Okay, so now let's talk about an Apple product that we've heard more rumors on than probably any other product in existence, and that is the Apple Car. So according to Bloomberg, Apple is reaching a make or break point in its decade-old effort to build a car, and they've pivoted to a less ambitious design with the intent of finally bringing an EV to market. And this will not be an autonomous car like they originally envisioned. And despite scaling back efforts on the project, Apple's launch timeline for the Apple Car has been pushed back yet again from 2026 to now targeting a 2028 release at the earliest. And if Apple cannot get a car out by 2028, executives may, quote, seriously reconsider the project's existence. So that is an interesting statement there. So it looks like if we don't have an Apple Car in 4 years, we may never see an Apple Car. So what do you guys think about the whole Apple Car thing? Like, is this something you're actually excited about? Do you think it's going to be way too pricey? Do you think it's just like a pipe dream and it's never going to happen? What do you think about it? Please let me know in the comments, because me personally, I don't really know what to think. Like, I want to believe it, I want to get excited about it, but I don't think I can until I actually see it existing. You know what I mean? I need to see something of it actually existing before I even get excited. I feel like I've been too excited for this for way too many years that I'm kind of over it at this point. Anyways, let's move on to the crazy AirTag story of the week. And this one is awesome because it was actually a submission. So shout out to Atai, a viewer submission here. It's the first viewer submission AirTag story. So if you want to send an AirTag story to me, of your own personal experience with an AirTag story, send it to my email, which is in the description down below, and make sure to include pictures. Anyways, this is from Atai. So he's from Budapest, and he said in 2022, he set out to adopt a Ukrainian refugee dog named Audrey. But the day before he was supposed to pick her up and bring her home, the person walking the dog got attacked by a homeless person, and the dog ran away and was lost for 5 days with no chip and no vaccines. But on that 5th day, Audrey somehow returned back to Atai and the previous owner he was adopting her from, and he found out that even though she was just 4 months old at the time, she had run away 5 times already. So with that information, he decided to buy an AirTag and put it on her, and good thing he did, because 2 weeks after adopting her, they were on a walk when a distracted taxi driver veered onto the sidewalk, hitting Audrey the dog, and since he wasn't holding the leash tight enough, she ran away yet again. But thanks to having the AirTag on her, Atai was able to track her down 2 hours later in a bush where her leg was injured from being hit. But thankfully the injury was not serious and she didn't have any broken bones. And now 2 years later, Audrey is safe, she's happy, and she's loving life. So for a change, we have a nice, wholesome story for the crazy AirTag story of the week. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is the latest in the world of Apple. I hope you enjoyed this episode as always. If you did, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also be sure to subscribe so you don't miss next week's Apple Weekly episode. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.